For decades, the world viewed Finland as the gold standard of the Nordic model, where a high-functioning welfare state and fiscal responsibility worked in perfect harmony. But the image of the flawless northern safe haven is dissolving. Finland's public debt has surged to nearly 90% of its entire economic output. This chart shows the general government deficit. The European Union sets a strict legal limit at 3%. But in 2024, Finland's deficit exploded to 4.4%. This fiscal deterioration triggered alarm bells across the financial world, leading the rating agency Fitch to recently downgrade Finland's credit rating. This erosion of fiscal discipline indicates a systemic failure in an economy long defined by its stability. The government has a ready explanation for the shortfall: an aggressive Russia right on its doorstep. Protecting 800 miles of shared border has become a matter of physical survival. This threat prompted a historic pivot, as Finland abandoned decades of neutrality to seek protection within the NATO alliance. Defense requires more than just signatures. Finland is in the middle of a massive hardware buildup, including the multi-billion-euro procurement of F-35 stealth fighter jets. To maintain its standing in the alliance, Helsinki is aiming for a permanent defense spending target of 3.5% of GDP. Legislators argue that the massive deficit is simply the necessary price for national security in a dangerous new era. However, the European Union Council isn't accepting that defense is a blank check. They have initiated an excessive deficit procedure, sending in the auditors to take control of Finland's fiscal sovereignty. The military alibi plays well with voters, but the auditors from Brussels have arrived to look past the patriotic rhetoric and check the real math. The EU actually has an escape clause. It's a temporary rule that allows nations to legally break deficit limits if the money is being spent on defense following the invasion of Ukraine. To see if the alibi holds up, we run the math. We take the 4.4% deficit and remove every cent spent on the military buildup. Even with the military budget stripped away, Finland's deficit still settles at 3.4%, well above the legal limit. This proves the military buildup isn't the cause of the crisis. It's a convenient distraction for a much deeper collapse in the nation's finances. If defense spending isn't the primary driver of the shortfall, we have to locate the actual source of the persistent fiscal bleed. The EU audit confirms the uncomfortable truth. The Finnish economy was already failing long before the Russian threat escalated. Fitch and the IMF describe the country as being trapped in a stagflationary doom loop, a combination of stagnant growth and rising costs that is grinding the national economy to a halt. The first symptom is a lost decade of productivity. While other nations advanced, Finnish labor productivity growth flatlined, preventing the economy from generating new wealth. Simultaneously, an aging population is driving up health and social costs, while the active tax base available to pay for them continues to shrink. Structural unemployment has also become entrenched, with the jobless rate stubbornly stuck around 10%. Because of these internal systemic failures, the Finnish economy was left completely unshielded and vulnerable, right as the global environment turned hostile. Any hopes for a quiet, gradual recovery were shattered by the outbreak of war in Iran and the subsequent global energy crisis. With oil futures peaking at $90 a barrel, the energy shock rippled through the supply chain, forcing the Bank of Finland to issue a dire interim forecast in March 2026. This chart shows the Bank of Finland's economic projections. The top line is where they expected the economy to be back in December. The bottom line is their revised March reality, showing that the central bank was forced to slash its 2026 GDP growth projection down to a microscopic. They have given Finland exactly until April 30th, 2026 to legally lock in a structural adjustment plan that corrects the deficit. The national ledger is now a zero-sum game. Because the €3 billion military budget is heavily protected by both domestic politics and geopolitical necessity, the required capital has to be extracted from somewhere else. To balance the books, the government immediately began slashing line items. They stripped €65 million from official development assistance and cut an estimated $167 million from refugee integration funds. To appease auditors in Brussels and purchase hardware for NATO, the government has to find billions in liquidity by aggressively gutting domestic civil spending. The reality of this macroeconomic squeeze is felt at the street level, directly at the doors of Kela, the Finnish social insurance institution. Parliament recently passed sweeping amendments to the social safety net, implementing a permanent 2 to 3% reduction in the basic social assistance amount for all adult recipients. They also completely abolished the €150 earned income deduction. This specifically impacts the working poor, ensuring that every cent of their wages is now calculated strictly against their benefits. The new laws also introduce severe punitive measures, including a devastating 50% cut to a citizen's basic survival assistance if they fail to meet strict new full-time job search requirements. Finland's forced pivot to guns over butter is steadily dismantling its historic welfare state. It is a harsh mathematical reality that when an economic model collapses, the poorest citizens are the ones forced to balance the ledger.